I apologize right off the bat that you have to listen to this, but it is what it is, I suppose. Thank you for your concern and your prayers, and for Bob and Larry and everybody that's kind of chipping in and do what needs to be done. Believe it or not, I'm actually a whole lot better today than I was, and I really don't. I've kind of stayed away from everybody, which is tough for me to do, but it evidently is a sinus infection. That's what they treated me for, and the antibiotics do seem to be working. Mornings are worse. As I get on into the day, I seem to be doing a lot better. So hopefully we do better tonight. Proverbs chapter 14, verse 34. All through the recent presidential campaign, which I think was probably one of the most bitter that I ever remember. And I go all the way back. Well, actually, I can go back to Eisenhower, but I really remember John F. Kennedy and Richard Nixon. Brutal. It was brutal. But even though it was tough, seems like they both conducted themselves in a, I hate to use the term, but a presidential way. This one this year, it was tough. It was tough. The theme from the Trump campaign, Mikey, I think I put a cap up there. Yeah. Make America great again. I hope that America does get great again. I hope we can come back to a place where some of us remember America being a country of greatness. I really hope that. And I think I know how to make that happen. I'm speaking on the subject, make America godly again. Because I believe if America will become godly again, and there's too much of God in our declarations, our Constitution, to not agree that America was founded on godly principles. It's just too much there. That's why I am praying that America can become godly again. I think this verse, which is very familiar, I think it gives us the key. Righteousness exalteth a nation, but sin is a reproach to any people. There's four main points that we're going to look at this morning. Four little R words. We begin with the word righteousness. Righteousness exalteth a nation. Righteous. You seldom ever hear the word anymore. Maybe in a few very conservative churches, you might hear that term. You don't hear it in the media. Even the politicians don't talk about it. Very seldom. If the word is used, so many times it's used in a detrimental way to actually poke fun, toward all those deplorable Christians. You don't hear that word spoken of and its importance. What's implied in the word righteousness? A couple of things. First of all, it implies sovereignty. It's an acknowledgement of a higher power. It seems that there are many in our world today whose view or concept of God or a higher power can be so vague. There is so much today that's involved in people actually believing and saying that you can become a God yourself. You develop yourself. You will reach godhood yourself. That's such a mockery. It's so sickening to even imply something like that. When you talk about righteousness, it is implying sovereignty. There is someone who is above and beyond anything or anyone on this earth. And for us, the implication is Jehovah God. It implies sovereignty. Second, it implies a standard. A higher power establishes rules and laws. It means that we submit. We were talking about this Wednesday night. It means that we submit to those who are in places of authority, starting at the top with God. Now, a world that don't even want to acknowledge a sovereign God is certainly not going to be interested in submitting to His law or to this book. So that's why they don't understand righteousness. No. Righteousness implies a sovereign God. Righteousness implies a standard of laws. You know, folks can mock the law of God all they want to. But someday they will understand, much too late, that God in heaven have established these laws. They will give account. Amen. I take no delight whatsoever in being able to say, ha, 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 I told you so. No. Knowing what awaits them, how can we take delight in it? The only thing we can do is pity their poor soul. But they made their choice, just like we made ours. Righteousness. The second word I put down was reward. Righteousness exalteth a nation. How can anyone deny that America is an exalted nation? We have been through major world wars. We are a young country. We have fought major wars. We even made it through a civil war. Very few countries ever do that. We are an exalted nation. Righteousness exalteth a nation. What's implied in an exalted nation? First of all, an exalted nation is set apart. Set apart. As I said a moment ago, you look through the historical documents, you'll probably have to dig because you can't find them in a lot of modern criteria today because God is being taken out of the history of America. That's so sad, but it's happening. But you can find those original documents and you'll find the foundation of God. That's not to say that every one of our forefathers were strong, God-fearing men. There were some of them whose lifestyles was very questionable. But thank God there was enough force in those men. And I believe even those who were not necessarily godly Christian men knew that the principles of a holy God worked. And if we want this nation to work, they knew that there was going to have to be a good foundational basis. And what better foundational basis than you can have than the rock of all ages, God himself. It's set apart. It's different. It's strong. Strong. I grew up through the 60s and 70s. And I don't say this to try to picture America as a bully, because I don't think America's ever been that way. Not the America that I remember. But I tell you one thing, we were a strong country. We were at the forefront. As far as economics was concerned, we were at the very forefront. Even when the Soviet Union was so big and so powerful, and even when there were threats to the south of us, right off of our mainland Florida, and there were huge missile buildups and everything else, thank God we had some men and some women who would make decisions based on their fear of a holy God and what was best for the people. I don't want to just bash politicians. But you know, one of the things I think politicians miss so much today, they have become an entity which serve themselves. They are placed and voted into offices to serve the people of this country. And you just don't see that anymore. That's so sad. I pray to God some things will change. Strong. I never worried. I'd see pictures of Khrushchev even as a young boy with that iron fist. But you know, I never overly worried, because I had confidence not only in this country, but even as a young boy, I had confidence in the God of this country. Righteousness. Reward. Then it gets bad. Revolt. Righteousness exalteth a nation, but sin. Stop. Sin. Let me break this verse down for you, this portion of the verse. It's real simple. Here it is. Righteousness will exalt a nation. We've already talked about that. This country has been blessed in innumerable ways. But just as certain as righteousness will exalt a nation, sin will destroy one. Now, that's not to say that sin has just come on the scene in the last few years. No. Sin has always been around. But you know what we do today? We overlook sin. We've now labeled things. I watched this develop. I watched this happen as a young man growing up. There were sins that we used to call something that really was bad. And then somewhere back in the 80s and 90s, we started changing those things. And, you know, a man wasn't a drunk. That's what he was when I was a boy. Bob and I grew up in Hampton, and there was some guys there. That's all they did. That's all they did. They'd drink anything, shaving lotion, anything, wouldn't they, Bob? Just to get a little alcohol. They were drunks. And that wasn't said, you know, to try to demean them or anything. That's just what they were. But then we changed it to becoming alcoholics. And you say, well, it's the same thing. I don't know. The word sounds different to me. And now we have become so politically correct, we don't know what to say. We have no idea. Do you find yourself increasingly living in a society where you have to think before you talk about some race some nationality, political correctness. And that's spawned all of the little buttercups and everything else that we have running around today. That's the America that we're living in. You can't say anything that might hurt someone or offend them. And if your man or woman doesn't win the presidency, then you just go to school and say, well, I don't feel like taking my test today. I'm so upset. It's okay. No, it's not okay. No, it isn't. It's time America became godly, and part of that's growing up. It really is. Righteousness exalteth a nation, but sin. Let me give you the fourth one. This is the worst one of all. Righteousness exalteth a nation, but sin is a reproach to any people. I tried to dig a little bit and get some definition for the word reproach. And I found three things. 3 times in the Bible that this concept or ideal of reproach is evident. And the best place to look is to look at the nation of Israel. One of them was disgrace. Nehemiah chapter 1 verse 3. The remnant that are left of the captivity there in the province are in great affliction and reproach. The wall of Jerusalem also is broken down, and the gates therefore are burned with fire. Enemies had came through and destroyed and done great disarray to the great city. And when those who had a heart from God said, we need to rebuild, they knew where to start. They knew they must go back to God. But this is such a horrible picture. They looked at the ruins. They saw the walls having been broken down. And it was so heartbreaking. There are so many walls that are broken down, ladies and gentlemen, in America today that need to be built back up. Amen? They really do. Dishonor. The Israelites in battle against the Philistines, they're quaking. They're on 2 different peaks, 2 mountaintops. They know that eventually they're going to have to go to fight. The Philistines say, there's a way we can stop a lot of bloodshed. If you believe that, then you can find you some of that oceanfront property in Arizona. We can stop some of the bloodshed. We've got a representative. Huge guy. You pick somebody out. We'll let them fight. Ever who wins the battle, then we'll let that country, nation be the winner. Now, young shepherd boy, David, his brothers are in battle. His father sends him down to check on the battle and to check on his brothers. And he gets close to where the battle is, and he hears this Philistine cursing Jehovah God. Sets him off. He went up to some who were there and asked, what shall be done to the man that killeth this Philistine and taketh away the reproach, there it is, from Israel? He was cursing Jehovah God. That was bringing a reproach upon God. Dishonor. I am glad that God is patient. because of the way that this nation has dishonored him. He has got such a place in our country, and we have dishonored him so much. Can it get any worse? The third definition is to strip away all that's good. I am fearful that we are really close to that in America today. Isaiah 5 verse 20, woe unto them. What a verse this is. Listen to this. Woe unto them that call evil good and good evil, that put darkness for light and light for darkness, that put bitter for the sweet and sweet for the bitter. Isn't that where we are? Things that are evil, according to the media, are presented in a good light, in a wonderful light. And things that are godly are cast in the most horrible light possible. It's where we are. I am all for, and this is not a political statement, I am all for making America great again. And I hope and trust that we can drop our grievances or whatever it was if our candidate didn't win, and realize that Donald Trump is the president-elect, and he's going to be the president. And we have a responsibility as Christian people to give them a chance and to support. I saw a Facebook thing I thought that made a lot of sense. Sitting back and hoping that the president fails is like getting on a plane and hoping that the pilot doesn't do his job. That makes no sense whatsoever. None. And again, this is not political. I'm more interested in making America godly. Godly. Let's bow our heads together.